This week in Pure Reinvention.
I think that's part of what Ponyride's all about, too, is we give people this opportunity to grow, but there's always going to be a limit to how much space we can give.
Episode 147, Noah Elliott Morrison, director at Ponyride.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
Aaron, with this podcast episode, we actually had a chance to sit down and talk to somebody that you know quite well.
Absolutely.
So what are the takeaways that Noah shared with us? You've probably heard them a number of times, but what are those takeaways that he shared with us that our listeners should be kind of cued into?
I love the idea that Noah mentioned about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. There are so many unknowns. So you have to be okay with not knowing and working through them and being creative and coming up with solutions. And I think that's fundamentally what the Ponyride space is about. It's about making something from nothing.
Do you think we can learn that?
Absolutely. You have to. That's the only way.
Because you'll hear people say, well, that's just not me. I'm just not good at being uncomfortable. But you're disagreeing with that.
I think so. I've seen it in myself. I think everything that we do, there is, of course, is a lot of nature in our beings, but a lot of it is nurture and that happens over your lifetime. What you learn today may not be what you need tomorrow, so you need to relearn. We have to be adaptive if we want to be successful.
And what you're suggesting is we always need to be on a constant journey of reinvention. He's got kind of an operations kind of thing going on too, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. Noah called his superhero quality his ability to be organized and structured and in the operations role. And I think that's critical because planning is such an important part of the journey. You have to place intentions in what you do if you want to be able to deliver on it, follow through, and execute.
In this month being Connect, his job in operations and organizing operations is make sure all the connections are sound and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we have this outcome at the end that's what we anticipated. But it isn't random energy going off in a lot of different directions. Mm-hmm. But his role as operations is to keep that energy organized so there is a predictable outcome. Let's listen.
This week's episode is sponsored by Willpower Consulting. Whether it be pursuing new avenues in content delivery like podcasts or developing a sustainable content building strategy, Willpower Consulting is with you every step of the way. Get a dose of willpower at WilliamRCarlson.com or at William R. Carlson on Twitter.
We have been very fortunate in that we've been able to do a number of podcasts on site at Ponyride, which is in Detroit, and we're very fortunate for this podcast to have Noah Elliott Morrison, who is the director of Ponyride. Thank you, Noah, for being here and being our guest.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Of the 5 steps in the reinvention process, which step do you most closely associate with?
I think probably ownership more than anything else, because we're trying to empower people. And yes, we are an incubator, but this is about helping people who, we're working out of their house, have this small business, have this idea, maybe it's not even a business yet, have this thing that they want to do and turn that into something larger.
And own it, move it forward.
Exactly.
What's your superpower?
I feel like one of my skills that I'm proud of is organizationally, being good at the operational aspects of things, sorting things into the right boxes, creating systems around things.
Organizing
like
chaos, huh?
Yeah.
And then,
and also letting chaos be chaos sometimes.
Well, sometimes out of chaos comes really cool stuff, right?
Exactly.
I mean, chaos is what we need in order to find what's next. Describe a situation most recently where you found yourself uncomfortable.
I don't get uncomfortable that often. I think in as far as the organization goes right now, we are at this point, and we've sort of been there a while, of being at capacity, being able to not help as many people as we would like to, and we would like to expand. Yeah. So it's sort of an uncomfortable position to have to be turning people away who want this dedicated space and to do manufacturing, to start their thing, and not to be able to help those people. So I feel like we're sort of constantly in that moment, and I guess I've gotten comfortable in that uncomfortable place of we work with the resources that we have, and we try and squeeze as much out of the space that we have. And it's always sort of a rotation of like, okay, this is opening up, this is where somebody else can come in, this is where people can work together, and we can put these people next to each other together and see what magic comes out of that. I think that's part of what Ponyride's all about too, is we give people this opportunity to grow, but there's always going to be a limit to how much space we can give. And there's always going to be something else that the business wants to get out of what they're doing. And, it is an incubator. It's not meant to be everyone's forever home, but we won't give people a timeline on when they have to leave.
Tell us a little bit about why Ponyride is in existence.
So Phil Cooley bought this building in 2011 in tax foreclosure. And he started his restaurant Slows with partners and also Gold Cash Gold. He had a wood shop, and the wood shop had to change homes a few times. He had all these resources, and he wanted to be able to share those with others. As the wood shop was moving to other locations, he also helped build out Le Petit Zonk down the street and wanted one location, really a home for that wood shop, and that's where it all started. So once he got this building, he started inviting friends in, started saying, these were artists, other people that wanted to start businesses or just had an idea, and gave them the space. And in exchange, the idea was, just put some sweat equity into this place, help knock down the walls, help prepare other people's spaces, help prepare your own spaces, and leave this space knowing that the next person can come in more comfortable into the building. That led to this whole place being volunteer built and built by the people who were working in here. At the beginning, it was definitely more of a hippie commune of people sort of sleeping on the floor every once in a while if they were doing weeks at a time.
Characters.
Yeah. The kitchen could get a little messy.
But this has matured into something way more than that.
Yeah. Once we became a nonprofit and started branching off, Phil moving on to some other projects that he really wanted to do community work. He's one of the most philanthropic people I know, really. He spends so much of his time giving his time away, working with kids. He spent a ton of time doing restoration in the Roosevelt Park area and was doing a concert series there for a few years. I'm constantly impressed by the way that he owns this building, and if he hadn't given away his time and basically not asking for a return on this space, it really couldn't exist. So I'm definitely thankful for that and thankful for this thing that he started. So now we have this system. It's 65 cents per square foot per month. That's all in, like all the utilities. You're not paying any superfluous charges on that. Once we give you a space in Ponyride, you're just paying for that square footage and being able to use that leverage of not having that. Basically, market rate in the area is close to double to that, if not more, for a heat, weather-controlled space with security. They also have access to offices. So obviously you want to make the things, but you have to have the time to sit down and do the meetings and build the business in other ways. And it's been really exciting to see the businesses who've thrived in that and moved on to their own spaces in Detroit, which is really the idea of like people being able to start this thing, stay in the city, making something, and grow on to help others.
So that's really where I want to spend a little bit of time, Noah. You had mentioned that the role of Ponyride is to bring in entrepreneurs that maybe need a little bit of a lift, where they maybe need additional resources or additional energies that are going on that a group would have that working at home you might not get. Mm-hmm. But you don't intend for them to live here for the rest of their lives. You intend this to be a space that they're working through in order to get to the other side. And so you mentioned that means they have to own their success journey. They have to own the fact that they're going to go through Ponyride to something else.
So I'll give an example. Detroit Denim came in as one of the early residents in our building, right around the time that Empowerment Plan came in, and whose Empowerment Plan is still here at the moment, but ready to move on to their next space. Detroit Denim makes jeans. They started working in this partnership with the two owners, and they started really small. And I think one of the things that they realized quickly is that it was exciting for people to come in to their space and see the jeans actually being made. It was something that they didn't realize was an exciting part of their business.
Yeah, so for some reason, people want to watch the sausage being made.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and so when, as they grew into the space, realized, this isn't really a retail space. The doors have to be locked because of these open workspaces that we have everywhere, that they can bring people up, but it's not the same as having a retail location. So they knew that was what they needed to do, but they also wanted to keep the magic of people being able to come in and see the jeans being made, see the denim being worked on. So they collaborated with someone else in the building, Paul Karras, who designed and built out a space for them there in the Riverfront district. in a pretty big space. And, the fact that the collaboration happened with a resident that's still in Ponyride, like outside of the space, is exactly what we want to see, of like this connection back to Ponyride and out to other people in the city.
What part of helping on that ownership journey do you have to take to kind of nurture that skill set along? Because a lot of people that come in don't know how to do that. I mean, if they did, they would have done that before. So this is the Ponyride a way of giving them that boost, but still probably you need to assist a lot in continuing that journey.
Having different networking events in the building. I think now we do a lot more business development than we did in the past. We work with the Build Institute that does some programs with us. SCORE mentorship program is here once a week. We recently started working with a lawyer who's doing business consulting, and he's doing hourlies once a week and by appointment. Those are free services that sort of give people an entrance into this other element that the parts of the business that they're maybe not as excited about, but are very necessary to grow with.
Well, and what you've really begun to introduce then is you've moved ownership along by also focusing on the last step in the reinvention process, which is connect.
Yeah.
And so you are really now beginning to help people see how their ownership can move forward by connecting them with resources both internally, and now you're starting to explain all these external resources. How are you discovering some of those resources? How do you know what people need?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I feel like it's sort of easy to start prescribing things and start to think like, well, I think everybody sort of needs this thing. But the
reality is it's all very individual, correct?
It's all very individual, and we have to be reactive. So we do some things where it's, we have this Lunch and Learn series that Aaron Patton is running right now, where, there is sort of a theme and a general concept, and people can sort of sign into that class. But, we ask for feedback, and we ask like, what do you want to see next? What things do you need to sort of move your business to the next place? So sometimes we'll sort of be responsive to specific businesses, and then other people will latch on to that. And I think so much of it here is really just about having the conversations with people and asking like, hey, what's going on? So, what are you looking for?
Yeah, and so that brings me to the really, really important question, which is so basic it's almost funny that I have to ask, but in your business, what role does listening play in really paying attention to and observing, right? It's not just always listening with our ears, but it's observing with our eyes the behaviors of your residents to connect them to the resources that they need.
It's paramount. So much of it is sort of waiting and watching. And some people don't, are ready to ask for things. Some other people are like less in that mode, and you need to just walk by one day and say like, "What's going on?" and get to some of the root of like, "What's the next step? How can I help you guys get there?" So much of it is this informal nature, and some of that's a strength, and some of that can seem like, well, what's even happening? It's a magic that's really hard to point to because it can happen so organically.
Mm-hmm. So Ponyride is not only making space available, it's also making connections available with the ultimate purpose, I think, of helping this fledgling business incubate to a point of liftoff.
Definitely. They'll want something, whether it's more space, whether it's a retail location, it can really be a variety of things, whether they feel like they really need to be positioned in this neighborhood, even if they do still just have like a closed office. Mm-hmm. Everybody at a certain point realizes that, this has been a great place to build something, but I need this thing, and it's going to be time to move at this date.
And therein lies, I think, the magic that Ponyride brings is not just the space, but an expectation. But I've not yet heard you say we expect you to stay here forever.
Right. No.
The expectation is, in fact, the reverse. Well, we're not going to have a specific timeline. We do expect you move in and mature to the point where you're ready to move and succeed in whatever is next.
Right. Definitely. And, once now that we've hit sort of this, we're 3 years audited reporting as a nonprofit, we keep building systems, keep looking for ways to sort of, monitor these businesses. And this year we are going to start collecting financial data, really basic stuff like what's your net income this year, gross income, and that kind of stuff. So we can compile all of the residents' information and sort of like show this is how businesses are growing in the space. We do ask that people give back to the community in some way. A lot of times that's so super qualitative. Our staff went out and did this volunteering event. We did this workshop with 8th graders that came into the building, doing like a business development thing with 8th graders, which, oh man, I love telling the story of how Floyd is a furniture manufacturer. They have all their manufacturing in the Great Lakes region, but their office at Ponyride is really, fulfillment. They do all online 2-door delivery.
Sure.
So when we had an 8th grade class come through on a field trip, they said, hey, we want to stay after the tour and spend a little bit more time with a couple of groups. And I connected them with the Dirt Label and Floyd. And I believe that time it was Detroit Denim when they were still in the building. And the cool thing that Floyd did was they said, what's a problem in your life? And this is something that they've done with university students. They've done with high school students. But it was cool seeing them do it with the 8th graders because they're like, oh, well, I don't like cleaning my room. And then they showed them from
That's funny. I'm not in the 8th grade. I don't like that either.
Yeah. But they showed them from that problem how you can create a business around it, like how you could, turn that into like finding out all the people who have rooms in the area and clean their rooms and have a service that, how much do you think people would pay for that? That kind of thing.
Turn your challenge into an opportunity.
Exactly.
And it's very much a mindset, right? It's very much starting as early as people are curious and making that happen. Noah, if people want to learn more about Ponyride, how can they get a hold of you?
So our website is www.ponyride.org. I just feel funny because I just said the wwws. I think everybody knows those. You can find out more about us, and you can apply for space. I will say, I feel like I talked to you a little bit about our capacity issue, but always apply. We're looking for businesses that do manufacturing, have a social mission. That's any way that you want to give back to the community. And a commitment to Detroit. If you want to stay here and do things here, I totally encourage you to apply. We can't guarantee space. We can't even guarantee you a timeline of when space will be available. Because this space fluctuates so much, I would say get on the list if you're interested. We have a free weekly tour every Wednesday at 2 p.m. It meets in front of the cafe entrance in our front parking lot. And again, go to our website to learn more about that free tour. Or if you want to bring a group to us, do a private tour, please email us, info@ponyride.org. We definitely look forward to hearing from people and, even just feedback about what they are excited about.
Thank you, Noah.
Thank you.
Aaron, one of the things that I really enjoyed in this conversation, and I'm just going to call it the power of observation, but it was how important that Noah is listening to the needs of the residents and adapting. Talk a little bit about how important it is to have those good, I won't call them listening skills, but they're not really listening just with our ears, right? We're listening with in a lot of different ways.
The power of observation and listening is being responsive, and maybe listening has, parts to it. We first start with the observation, with watching. When we bring someone into the space, we want them to not only be comfortable there, but have the resources they need to grow and be successful. And the only way you can know those things is if you ask and you talk to them and you listen to their needs. He also mentioned sort of the partnerships with SCORE Mentor Program, with Build Institute, also with the workshops that I help organize monthly called Lunch and Learns, where we bring in outside experts that meet and talk with the residents based on the needs they've expressed in terms, whether it be marketing or finance or even human resource management or healthcare.
I would say that the power of observation has got to be one of those critical skill sets that as a leader, if you don't have that, you're working at a serious disadvantage, because it's the power of observation that actually allows you then to know where to put your energy. And what you're suggesting and what Noah talked about was that's one of his core key strengths, is the ability to have that power of observation. And I would encourage any leader to continually work on those things that which we observe are always changing. And it really allows us to be a relevant leader when we can adapt our energies along the lines of what the business needs are through our observation. Which leads me to the second point, Aaron. That sometimes can be kind of uncomfortable. How do we get to where we're comfortable being uncomfortable?
Being very secure I think people have to know themselves and be secure with their identities and who they are. If you know who you are and know what you stand for, you can pretty much operate and survive anywhere.
This is a really interesting thought that you just had, because you just separated out being a leader from leading the entity. You actually said if you're secure as a leader, then you can be okay with a little bit of a disruptive entity because you're secure with you. And the two are different. That a leader has to separate themselves away from the business to be secure in their role as a leader.
Right. Then you won't take things personally. I've learned this, through my own experiences. When you go home at night, you aren't taking the building and the staff with you. You're just taking your own thoughts, and you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and know that you've done a good job and go to sleep at night. I want to be able to sleep well when I go home, and go to bed.
I learned how to separate my role as a leader with the challenges of the business.
Exactly.
If you're ready for a change, make it a change that lasts. Make it pure reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter at Pure Reinvention or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.